Buenos días, ¿cómo están? Today we're going to look at how do we create questions in Spanish. What we're going to do is look at it from a statement to form a question, as well as the opposite. What we'll notice is that statements, responses, and questions are related, just like they are in English. So here I have a statement. El estudiante es inteligente. Before we move forward, let's make sure that we understand what these words' functions are in the sentence. So the first one, el estudiante, which part of the, what would we call this? And that's not how you make an arrow. I'm trying to make an arrow. There we go. El estudiante. El estudiante is what we call the subject of the sentence. The subject is who does the action or who's being, who is the main focus of this. So in this case, el estudiante is our subject. Excuse my lovely writing here, but limited tools as to what I decided to go with today. Although, if I may say so myself, I'm doing rather well for just using a touchpad. Alright, so el estudiante is what we call the subject. So whenever we refer to the subject of a sentence, and we looked at that kind of with ser, it's who is or who is doing the action. El estudiante. We're going to talk about this a lot this year. Es is what we call the verb. Let me get my arrow again. So es is what we call the verb. A verb is either telling about existence or action. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So this is the verb. These are the things that we're going to be talking about when we talk about conjugating and telling us what is happening. Sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. That's R. Weird. See, because that was my R. It would have looked good the first time around, but it didn't stick. Just like that. Alright. Here's the verb. Then what we've been looking at a lot in this session are adjectives. Inteligente is an example of an adjective. So inteligente is an adjective. Apologize for this dead time. However, this is a great opportunity for you to write this down as well, in case this is something that you have forgotten from your English language arts classes. Now, we are going to be spending time looking at both of these items. Oh, can I go past? It does let me go past. Yay! So that's the adjective. Now, why is this important? When we are making a statement, the subject will always precede the verb, and then extra information comes along, in this case the adjective. But when we want to ask a question, so instead of stating that the student is smart or intelligent, maybe I want to find out, is he or she, is the student smart or intelligent? What's wonderful about Spanish is that whenever we create or read a question, there's always this upside down question mark that precedes it. So we can already prime ourselves, get ourselves ready to know, oh, I'm going to need to respond. English does not always have this. Now, when we're listening to Spanish, it follows the same idea as in English, where we raise our voice at the end. Okay. So, is the student intelligent? ¿Es el estudiante inteligente? So what we can do, notice in English as well as in Spanish, we switch places. The verb and the subject switch places. In a statement, el estudiante es inteligente. The student is smart. ¿Es el estudiante inteligente? Is the student intelligent? So we switch. So let's do that here. I'm going to actually move these down. That's not how I'm going to move it down, though. Hang on, let me do this again. So, there you go. So the S becomes the beginning of our question, S, and then comes the subject, and we'll worry about what the L is later, but right now we're just going to keep them together. Es el estudiante inteligente? So now, let's move that guy over here. Wish I could do this a little more. Okay, so es el estudiante inteligente? So now we have the verb, then the student, then the adjective. Notice that's different than what we had in the statement. That's how it has to happen in English. That's how it's often done in Spanish. Actually, I take this back. There's one other incident. No, that's not the word I want. There's a couple other things in English and Spanish. Spanish gives you the most room, though, to kind of finagle your question. And intonation can be a lot, as well as this opening question mark. In Spanish, I could move the the adjective between the noun and the subject and form a question this way. ¿Es inteligente el estudiante? And the reason we can do this is because we're going to find that the subject does not always have to be directly identified, and so it's kind of tagged on as an afterthought. This is also a correct way to ask a question in Spanish. Also a correct way to ask a question in Spanish, not as common though, is to keep it the same order. ¿El estudiante es inteligente? And that, though, just like in English, kind of implies doubt. I shouldn't have done it that way. Like, you're really telling me that the student is smart? I don't know about that. Okay, that's kind of how we do it in English as well. We'll find that if we leave the subject before the verb, we're implying doubt. I don't really believe that statement that you just told me. So that would also be true in Spanish. Now, just like in English and in Spanish, we could make the statement and add, in English we say, right? The student is smart, right? That last word at the end makes it a question. So, to make this into a statement without the question marks, or a question without question marks in this portion, but we don't use the positive. Oh, look at that. It kills me how it does that. It'll flip right over. All right. So, in English, we use the affirmative. Right? You agree with me? In Spanish, we will use the opposite. So it would become, no, el estudiante es inteligente. No? And we'd still need to use our upside down question marks. Is that going to, no, that's going to make something funky. So let's just do this way. Apologize. So there's our upside down question mark. And we would use no after it. No? We could also say verdad, which then goes with the affirmative. But let's worry about the no instead. So, wrap up. A statement is always the subject, verb, and then whatever follows, in this case an adjective. To ask a question, we typically put the verb first, followed by the subject, and then the rest of the sentence. ¿Es inteligente es el estudiante inteligente? And that makes our question. So think of this as you go back to your discussion to ask your classmates questions. Okay? How can you redefine this as using questions? Remember, you also know how to say things like ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Cuántos años tiene? To also ask questions regarding the other individuals that they might be referring to. Please let me know if you have any questions over this. I apologize, it's not all nice and clean, but I hope that it was helpful. Hasta luego.